Okay, in this tutorial I will show you, or in this series of tutorials I will show you how to work with the home automation modules. There are a number of modules. The first one is how to manage your devices. This is the fundamental module which you absolutely have to set up. And then once you have done it, you can create floor plans and put devices on it to give a visual indication of the temperature in the room. You can create charts, you can create schemes. For example, you could say it's a grouping, you could say turn all the lights off. You can execute actions based on events that are happening in the rules. And finally, you can create a schedule. You could say at 8 o'clock take a specific action. But the first thing we have to do is manage the house. So this is an XPL based application, so when the XPL messages are going over the network, they are captured and the devices are added into this list box. What you can do is you can change the font size to make it a bit smaller, and you can change the width of this list box, and so you have a number of devices in here. These are Oregon sensors, and you have to tell DHS what kind of device it is, whether it's a switch, a security device, or a sensor. And this one is a temperature sensor, and this is a CPU load. This is an XPL application which shows the CPU load. It's also a sensor, and at the top I have two switches. So I tell DHS this is a switch. Okay. And then for each of those devices you have two pages, manage and use. And the manage page is where you can change the name. You can say this is the kitchen, and the living room light. And you could say this is the temperature. Now for temperature, it's recommended to use a naming convention, something like temp, which can be useful later in the rules and in filtering. So you could say I filter all the devices which end with bracket temp bracket. Okay, and then this is the CPU load. I'm not going to change the name. Now for each of those devices I have manage and use. For manage you can add attributes, and if you have home easy devices, for a switch you have to add an attribute. You have to write something like protocol is arg, and then you click plus, and from now on this attribute will be added for all every time you switch on or off this light. And you have to do this for all the home easy devices. The use page for a switch is just on off, so you can turn it on. You can see it's on, or you turn it off and then it's off. Or with a dimmer you can set the dimmer level, which is slightly different for a sensor, where you actually see the value. You can say this is a numeric or a text value, and you can set some format. You do some formatting of the value, and you could say this is a temperature, and you have a number of predefined formats, and once you've chosen the format you will see that it looks like this. You can change it by adding the text directly in the format box. You can add a C, or you can just leave the standard format. And finally you have the recording button, and once you've clicked it and it says active, you are recording the data. Every time a value enters it will be stored in the database, so you can use it to create. Now that we have told DHS what the devices are, we have to create floors and rooms, and then we have to put the devices in it, which will be useful in other modules. So we'll create 2 floors, and in each of those each of those floors we will create a room where we say add room, and in the other one I will create one as well, and let's give it some useful names. So this is the first floor, and on the first floor we have a bedroom, and then we have the ground floor, and there we will create the living room. So now we have those floors and rooms, and we can move devices in it. We can say this living room light has to go in the living room, so we say move selected up, and then the device is positioned into the room. And suppose that this kitchen light goes into the bedroom. That was not a very well chosen name, but suppose we do. We can then just move it up 1 time, 2 times, and then it's put into the bedroom. And so you can keep on constructing rooms and floors and adding devices in it and model your house, and we will show later on how to use that information. And so I've constructed a complete house now. As you can see, we have a basement, the ground floor with a number of rooms, the first floor, and we have a second floor, and then at the end we have the default floor, which you should always leave. You can't delete it, because all the new devices that are detected will be moved into the default room. And then, as I've shown you before, you can change the type and move it upwards into one of the rooms you have defined.